So here I have a 2021 BMW X4M competition. This is absolutely the flagship model in the X3, X4 lineup. And this is the one that has the most amount of power and torque and the highest level of performance features and tuning available. This is an absolutely amazing SUV that does not drive like an SUV because it's as close as you can get to a sports car. Now, what I want to point out in this review is the 5 best things about the X4M competition and why this should be on your shopping list should you be looking for a high performance, high profile SUV. So I'm going to point out 5 best things about the X4M competition, starting with the point number 1, which is pretty obvious, and that is the phenomenal performance of this X4M competition. It has shocking amount of power and torque, and when you drive this thing, you cannot even believe this is supposed to be an SUV. A 3-liter inline 6-cylinder engine, good for 503 horsepower and 442 foot-pounds of torque, utilizing 8-speed automatic transmission and all-wheel drive. This thing rockets to 60 miles per hour in just under 4 seconds. This is a crazy amount of performance, again, for an SUV with a sport utility heritage. But this is also the competition model, and so not just the X4M, but because of the competition model, it has more power than the standard X4M, which already has amazing power. And it has specialty tuned suspension and shocks and so forth that makes this particular model the pinnacle of all SUVs. And what makes X4M competition, I think, such an amazing beauty is the fact that you get all this performance and handling in a package that still provide a great level of comfort, refinement, and smoothness. I think that's one of the challenge of owning something like a BMW M3 or M4, or in my case a Toyota Supra, is that they're super quick and super fun to drive, but they're just so uncomfortable sometimes to drive because they're so stiff and bumpy on regular road surfaces. But that's one advantage of something like this X4M competition. It has all the performance and handling of pure sports car, but it is really very comfortable and smooth and surprisingly quiet. I was expecting the exhaust to be a little bit noisier, and it does start up in a very loud mode, but as you begin to drive away, the exhaust is quiet, the interior is pretty quiet, and it's actually very comfortable to drive. So now you can play around with many different modes in terms of transmission, steering, engine, and suspension, and you can dial up or dial down the performance, so you can make it a little bit more comfortable or a little bit more harsh or firm. But regardless of which mode you pick, I'm finding this X4M to be very comfortable over a variety of different roads, and that's one big surprise to me and one big advantage of buying something like this over a pure sports car. So of the 5 things that are best about this X4M competition, the first one is an obvious performance and acceleration, and the second part is its super sharp and accurate handling. It's a little hard to describe unless you drive this thing, but handling is pure sports car territory. It's sharp, accurate, and it goes wherever you point it. The real highlight of this SUV is the super sharp handling. So one of the ways to evaluate sharpness as an engineer is to just make a quick abrupt turn here, left and right, as I'm moving right now, and the car moves so quickly and so accurately. Some of you guys know that I own a 2020 Toyota Supra, and that car has a really amazing sharp handling, and honestly this one is just as sharp and just as fast. As I move my steering to the left or to the right and make quick turns, the car just follows it so precisely and so quickly. Again, it's hard to believe I'm driving an SUV. It's very sharp, the handling is quick, and going around corners regardless of how much of a curve it is, it just follows that curve like a glue. It's just a really shocking level of performance and handling in this SUV. I will point out though that what we call on-center feel, which is the tendency for the steering to go back to the center when you move the steering to the left and right, is a little bit off in my opinion. So compared to, let's say, Porsche Macan or Porsche Cayenne Turbo, those two cars have a slightly better on-center feel and slightly better road feel coming into the steering. I do find the steering a little bit light regardless of what mode I choose, but in terms of accuracy, the preciseness, and the quickness of the steering, this X4M competition is absolutely one of the best in the world. The third best thing about the X4M is the beautiful design. So there is a kind of sloping roofline here that's distinct and quite different from the X3M. The two cars share a very similar platform and powertrain, but the X4M has this sloping roof design that makes the SUV kind of look like a coupe, as they call it. Perhaps it's not a coupe, but it has that very much of a swept design, and it makes the SUV not look like an SUV. So if you always wanted a sporty car, but you absolutely have to have a kind of a practical design, and SUV is on top of your list, but you want something that looks great, well, this is the one that provides amazing design. The fourth best thing about this SUV is the overall quality. This is a car that truly feels rich and expensive. So let's take a quick look to see how well the X4M competition does. So I do my usual ping pong ball test, which is to take my ping pong ball and simply gently move up between the panels here and to see if the panels are well lined up. And as expected, this the alignment of the body panels, the fit and finish is absolutely first class. I did notice just a little bit of a difference in alignment between these two panels toward the tip here, but nothing out of the ordinary. So the body fit and finish and the way the panels come together is absolutely first class. Same thing along here between the front quarter panel and the door, and then between the two front and the back door as well. Good alignment. The gap between the panels are actually quite good too, although not quite as tight as what we've seen in the Lexus models, but pretty well in alignment with all the German high profile models. So really tight here, particularly well made here, and over to the back as well. There's again a little bit of a difference in the level between here and here, but still world class, still really well done. And then also just doing a quick walk around of the paint job. Again, I don't expect anything out of the ordinary here. This is a BMW after all, and typically speaking, they do a really great job with the paint job. So I can tell it's the body integrity is excellent, but also the paint quality is first class. Really good gloss, very good surface finish. You can tell by looking at it closely here. And I'm going to do a quick paint thickness check to see how well the paint was applied to the body. But the overall fit and finish of the body and the paint, of course, is second to none in this X4M competition. Generally speaking, paint thickness gauge is a great way to tell how much of the paint was applied to the body. Thicker the better, obviously. And today's world of car company trying to save money, the paint is getting thinner and thinner. But let's take a look to see how good the paint is this on BMW X4M. 196, 164, 112. So no surprise here, it's about the same thickness as other manufacturers, between 120 and 180. I was expecting a slightly thicker paint, but nevertheless it's pretty standard here. Now let's check for the quality inside the car. So I'm going to look for the seams to make sure everything comes together well. That includes the stitching, which is actually typically in BMW, it's always really, really well done. And I can tell there's nothing out of the alignment. And even the stitching and the steering here is really well done. Then I do a quick rattle and squeak test. I didn't hear anything while driving, but sometimes it helps to take something heavy and thick, like this is a hockey puck, and you just kind of hit it to see if you can induce a rattle. And so in the car that's not very well built, if you do this, you can hear right away rattles and loose parts. It's pretty good here. So again, in the BMW, typically parts are well put together, and I didn't expect anything that's loose. Yep, no, everything's good. So hockey puck is just about the right weight to do that check, and I found this to be just the perfect. I hear a little bit here, but it's not loose. It's just the sound of the plastic. So overall, the quality inside, in terms of stitching, in terms of how the materials come together, and the overall fit and finish is first class. It's actually as good as I've seen in any top models. The fifth and the last best part of this X4M is the practicality of this car. Even though it is a sporty SUV with a sloping roofline, it still has plenty of room inside. Compare this to BMW M3 or M4 or any other sporty type performance coupes or sedans, and you realize that this car has so much more to offer in terms of practicality. There's a lot more space in the trunk, obviously great space inside front and back seat. Of course, it's not a huge car. For that, you gotta move up to an X5 or X6, but it has surprising room and surprising practicality built into this car. This is just kind of sweet spot for me. It's not too big, it's not too small, it's still very practical, and I can use this to carry passengers and other things, and with absolute comfort, but small enough that it feels nimble, and small enough that it provides that kind of a sports car feel. So the practicality of this SUV I think is very good considering the performance, and combined together with the performance of a sports car, it's hard to beat this combination. So I just went through 5 best things about the X4M competition, starting with the performance and ending with the practicality. Of course, this is high-end, high-priced SUV, not for everyone because the pricing really not within reach for many of us. And it competes with Alfa Romeo Stelvio, Quadrifoglio, Porsche Macan Turbo, as well as Mercedes GLC 43 and GLC 63. You might even argue that it competes with Audi SQ5, although this one has way more performance than the Audi model. And in comparison to all those competition, I think this one has the best balance of performance, ride, design, and styling. It's just a cool car to have, and if you can afford the price, if you can justify this pricing, it's hard to beat this balanced combination of performance, design, features, and practicality.